The jungle moon of Verdania held secrets that 12 beings from 4 different worlds had come to uncover. Dr. Alex Reed wiped sweat from his forehead as he watched his alien teammates argue in front of the massive cliff that blocked their path. The wall of stone rose so high that clouds gathered around its peak, hiding whatever lay beyond in mist and shadow. 3 months of preparation had led to this moment. The Galactic Council had chosen this expedition carefully, bringing together the best minds from across known space. The Korathi were master strategists, their blue-scaled faces always calm and calculating. The Threxians built machines that could reshape planets, their tall silver bodies moving with mechanical precision. The Vithari could solve mathematical problems that would take human computers years to process, their forearms working multiple control panels at once. Alex was the only human among them, chosen not for any special technology, but because his species had a reputation for solving problems in unexpected ways. Right now, though, he felt like the weakest link in a chain of brilliant minds. Commander Vorth, the expedition leader, stood before a holographic display showing the cliff in 3 dimensions. His Korathi features remained expressionless as he studied the data. The readings are conclusive. This barrier cannot be overcome with our current resources. The ancient ruins they sought lay somewhere on the plateau above. Energy signatures detected from orbit suggested technology more advanced than anything in their databases. The discovery could change everything they knew about galactic history, but only if they could reach it. Cass, the Threxian engineer, manipulated her own display with quick gestures. Our climbing mechs carry enough power for a 50-meter vertical ascent. This cliff measures 300 meters. The mathematical impossibility is clear. Alex approached the wall and placed his hand against the smooth stone. The surface felt warm from the day's heat, and he could see tiny cracks running through the rock like spiderwebs. Thick vines cascaded down from somewhere far above, their green length disappearing into the mist at the cliff's top. "What about the transport shuttles?" asked Nira, one of the Vethari scientists. Her voice carried the musical tone common to her species. "Atmospheric disturbances above the cliff create severe turbulence," Vorth replied. "Our pilots cannot guarantee safe passage through the electromagnetic storms." Alex pulled gently on one of the vines. It felt strong, almost like rope. The fibers were thick and twisted together naturally, creating a cord that could probably support significant weight. He looked up, trying to trace its path to the top, but the height made it impossible to see where it ended. "The plasma cutters could carve handholds," suggested another team member. "The energy requirements would drain our ship's reserves," Kess calculated quickly. "We would need 47 hours of continuous cutting, assuming optimal conditions." Alex continued examining the vines while the others discussed their options. The expedition had brought the most advanced technology available, but none of it seemed suitable for this challenge. The aliens approached every problem with machines and computers, searching for complex solutions to match their sophisticated minds. "Perhaps we should consider magnetic grapples," Vorth suggested. "The rock composition contains insufficient ferrous materials," Nira reported after scanning the cliff face. "Magnetic attachment would fail within seconds." Alex tested another vine, wrapping it around his hand and pulling hard. The plant fibers held firm, showing no signs of breaking or stretching. He had spent years rock climbing on Earth, and these vines reminded him of the natural fiber ropes used by ancient climbers. "The orbital survey remains our best option," Vorth concluded. "We can map the plateau from above and plan a future mission with appropriate equipment." The team began packing their gear, already discussing the report they would file with the Galactic Council. Alex heard them talking about mechanical solutions, energy requirements, and technological limitations. None of them seemed to notice the natural climbing aids hanging right in front of them. As the others prepared to return to their ship, Alex lingered at the base of the cliff. The vines swayed gently in the breeze, some as thick as his arm, others thin as rope. They had grown here for centuries, maybe millennia, adapting to the cliff's conditions and finding purchase in cracks invisible to the sophisticated scanners. "Are you coming, Alex?" Vorth called out. I want to collect some botanical samples, Alex replied. These plants might have useful properties we haven't discovered yet. The alien team members exchanged glances that Alex had learned to recognize. They were being polite about what they saw as human curiosity about primitive life forms. To them, plants were simply biological matter to be cataloged and studied, not tools to be used. Take your time, Vorth said. We will prepare the departure sequence. As the aliens disappeared into the jungle, heading back to their landing site, Alex remained alone with the cliff. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the rock face, and he could hear the distant calls of alien birds echoing through the forest. He walked along the cliff's base, examining different sections of vine growth. Some areas had multiple thick strands hanging close together, while others showed single vines that had grown to incredible lengths. The plants seemed to have adapted to the rock's texture, finding microscopic cracks and crevices that provided enough grip for their roots. Alex had climbed cliffs like this before, though none quite so tall. On Earth, he had learned to read rock faces, finding the subtle variations in texture and structure that provided handholds and footholds. He had learned to trust his body's ability to adapt to challenging conditions, to find solutions that didn't require machines or computers. The aliens saw this cliff as an engineering problem requiring technological solutions. Alex saw it as a climbing challenge that needed only courage, skill, and the right tools. The tools were already here, hanging in plain sight, grown by nature specifically for this purpose. As darkness fell over the jungle, Alex made his decision. Tomorrow, while his teammates prepared their reports about the impossible barrier, he would attempt something they had never considered. He would climb this cliff using nothing but the vines in his own 2 hands, the galaxy's most advanced species had given up on reaching the plateau. The human would try a different approach. Dawn broke over the jungle with the sound of exotic birds calling from the canopy above. Alex had spent the night testing vines, learning their properties through touch and observation rather than scanning equipment. His alien teammates had departed for the orbital station hours ago, their ship's engines lighting up the sky as they carried their reports of failure back to the Galactic Council. The thick morning mist clung to the cliff face like a living thing, but Alex could see clearly enough to work. He had selected 20 of the strongest vines, each one tested with his full body weight. The plant fibers showed remarkable tensile strength, evolved over millions of years to withstand the planet's fierce storms and temperature changes. Alex began the careful process of weaving the vines together, using techniques he had learned from rock climbing instructors and survival experts. Back on Earth, the aliens would have dismissed this as primitive craftsmanship. But Alex understood that sometimes the oldest methods were also the most reliable. He worked methodically, testing each section of his improvised rope as he created it. The vines had a natural twist that made them grip together when properly woven, creating a climbing line that grew stronger as he added more strands. The finished rope would be crude compared to the synthetic materials his teammates used, but it would serve its purpose while he worked. Alex thought about the differences between human and alien approaches to problem solving. The Korathi relied on strategy and planning, spending days analyzing every variable before taking action. The Threxians built machines to handle challenges, believing that technology could overcome any obstacle. The Vitheri calculated probabilities and risk factors, making decisions based on mathematical certainty. Humans, Alex realized, approach problems differently. They were willing to try solutions that might fail, to take risks that seemed illogical, to use whatever tools were available rather than waiting for perfect conditions. It was not superior intelligence that set humans apart, but a willingness to attempt the impossible with imperfect means. The vine rope grew longer as Alex worked, eventually reaching what he estimated to be 400 meters in length. He had made it longer than the cliff's height to account for the need to tie secure knots and create backup anchor points. The rope felt substantial in his hands, nothing like the delicate plant matter his teammates had dismissed. Alex created a harness from equipment straps and fabric strips, fashioning a crude but functional climbing system. He repurposed metal clips from the expedition supplies as makeshift carabiners and wrapped fabric around his hands for better grip. The gear looked primitive compared to his teammates' sophisticated equipment, but it would do the job. The alien teams had brought powered ascenders that could carry a climber up a vertical surface at walking speed, but those machines required specific anchor points and power supplies. Alex's approach needed only the strength of his arms and legs, the grip of his hands, and the simple physics of rope and leverage. As the morning sun burned away the mist, Alex began preparing his climbing route. He studied the cliff face with a careful attention of an experienced climber, noting the subtle variations in texture and color that indicated different types of rock. The alien scanners had seen only smooth stone, but Alex could read the cliff's history and its surface. There had been water running down this face once, creating tiny channels and depressions. Ancient weathering had left microscopic handholds, invisible to mechanical sensors but detectable by human touch. The vines had found these same features, using them to anchor their roots and grow upward toward the light. Alex secured his vine rope to the strongest root system he could find. A massive tangle of plant matter that had grown deep into cracks in the cliff's base. He tested the anchor point with multiple hard pulls, making sure it would hold his weight plus the dynamic forces of climbing. The roots had been growing here for decades, maybe centuries, creating an anchor more reliable than any mechanical device. The climbing route would follow the natural line of the vines, using their growth pattern as a guide to the path of least resistance. Alex could see places where the rock face offered better holds, and others where he would need to rely entirely on the rope. The ascent would require careful pacing and multiple rest stops, but it was definitely possible. His alien teammates had calculated the energy requirements for mechanical ascent and found them insufficient. They had analyzed the rock composition and determined that their attachment systems would fail. They had modeled the atmospheric conditions and concluded that powered flight was too dangerous. Every technological solution had been tried and found wanting, but Alex was not thinking about technology. He was thinking about the basic human ability to climb, to grip, to endure, and to keep moving upward one handhold at a time. The cliff had defeated the galaxy's most advanced engineering, but it could not defeat the simple human refusal to accept defeat. Alex checked his improvised gear one final time, making sure every knot was secure and every piece of equipment properly attached. The vine rope hung down the cliff face like a green lifeline, disappearing into the mist above. Somewhere beyond those clouds lay the ancient ruins that had drawn them across the galaxy, the secrets that might change everything they knew about the universe. The aliens had given up and gone home to file their reports. The human adjusted his makeshift harness and reached for the rope. The galaxy's most sophisticated species had declared this climb impossible. Alex was about to prove them wrong, using nothing but twisted plant fibers and human determination. He began to climb. The first 20 meters were the easiest. Alex's muscles were fresh, his grip strong, and the morning air still cool against his skin. The vine rope held perfectly, its natural fibers providing exactly the right amount of flexibility to absorb the shock of his movements while maintaining the strength he needed to pull himself upward. Hand over hand, Alex climbed steadily. The technique came naturally after years of practice on Earth's mountains and cliff faces. His legs pushed against the rock while his arms pulled on the rope, creating a rhythm that conserved energy and maintained momentum. The aliens had seen this as a mechanical problem requiring powered solutions, but Alex understood it as a dance between human body and natural forces. At 50 meters, Alex paused on a narrow ledge to rest. Already, the jungle floor looked small. Below him, the trees reduced to a green carpet stretching to the horizon. The alien landing site was invisible from this height, hidden somewhere in the vast forest. His teammates were probably filing their reports right now, explaining to the Galactic Council why the cliff was impossible to climb. Alex checked his vine rope, running his hands along its length to feel for any signs of wear or damage. The natural fibers showed no stress, their twisted structure distributing the load evenly. A synthetic rope might have shown fraying or stretching by now, But these vines had evolved specifically to handle tension and movement. The second stage of the climb proved more challenging. The cliff face became steeper, forcing Alex to rely more heavily on the rope and less on footholds in the rock. His alien teammates' powered ascenders would have handled this easily, but their machines required energy cells that would have been exhausted long before reaching this height. Alex's approach required only the energy stored in his own muscles, supplemented by the simple physics of the rope and his climbing technique. He had learned to read his body's signals, to pace himself for a long ascent, to find rest positions that allowed recovery without losing progress. At 100 meters, the wind began to pick up. The vine rope swayed gently, but its natural elasticity dampened the movement rather than amplifying it. Alex realized that the vine's evolution had prepared them for exactly this situation. They had grown on this cliff for millennia, adapting to every condition he now faced. The Korathi would have calculated wind resistance and declared the climb too dangerous. The Threxians would have designed stabilizing systems that required more power than they possessed. The Vitheri would have run probability models showing unacceptable risk factors. But Alex simply adjusted his technique using the rope's movement to help rather than hinder his progress. Halfway up the cliff, Alex encountered his first real challenge. The rock face became completely smooth, offering no handholds or footholds. His teammates' magnetic grapples would have failed here, unable to find purchase on the mineral composition. Their plasma cutters might have carved holds, but the energy cost would have been enormous. Alex solved the problem with pure climbing technique. He used the rope like a gymnast uses parallel bars, swinging his body weight to create momentum and carry him past the smooth section. The vine rope stretched and flexed with his movements, storing energy and releasing it at exactly the right moments. The technique would have looked impossible to his alien teammates, but it required no technology, no power source, no complex calculations. It needed only the human ability to adapt, to use physics and body mechanics to overcome obstacles that defeated sophisticated machinery. At 200 meters, the first storm clouds began to gather. Alex could see them building on the horizon, dark and heavy with rain. The aliens' weather monitoring systems would have detected the approaching storm hours ago, probably using it as another reason to abandon the climb. But Alex had climbed in storms before. He knew that rain could actually improve climbing conditions in some situations, washing dust from handholds and increasing the friction between rope and rock. The natural vine rope would perform better when wet, its fibers swelling to create an even stronger grip. The storm hit just as Alex reached the 250-meter mark. Rain lashed the cliff face and lightning illuminated the jungle far below. The aliens' electronic equipment would have failed in these conditions. Their sophisticated sensors overwhelmed by electromagnetic interference. Alex's simple approach proved superior. The vine rope, now thoroughly soaked, gripped his hands like glue. The rain washed away the sweat and fatigue, cooling his overheated muscles. The storm that would have forced his teammates to retreat became an ally in his ascent. He could feel the cliff's texture changing as he climbed higher. The rock became more fractured, offering better handholds but also more unstable sections. Alex's experienced hands could detect loose rock through touch, avoiding dangerous holds that mechanical sensors might not have identified. At 270 meters, Alex paused to look up. The cliff's top was still hidden in mist, but he could sense that he was getting close. The angle of the rock face was changing, becoming slightly less vertical. The vines around him were thicker here, suggesting that their anchor points above were substantial. The final 30 meters tested every skill Alex had developed over years of climbing. The rock was unstable, the holds uncertain, the weather deteriorating. But the vine rope held strong, and Alex's determination proved stronger than any obstacle. His alien teammates had given up because their technology was insufficient. Alex succeeded because he had never relied on technology in the first place. He had trusted in human adaptability, in the simple physics of rope and leverage, in the natural tools that evolution had provided. As Alex pulled himself over the cliff's edge and onto the plateau above, He realized that he had just accomplished something that the galaxy's most advanced species had declared impossible. The ancient ruins stretched before him, their secrets waiting to be discovered by the human, who had refused to accept defeat. The aliens had abandoned the cliff because their sophistication had become a limitation. The human had climbed it because sometimes the best solution is the simplest one. The plateau stretched before Alex like a hidden world, its ancient secrets finally within reach. As he caught his breath and secured his vine rope to a sturdy tree, he marveled at what lay before him. The ruins were not the cold, geometric structures he had expected, but something far more extraordinary. Buildings rose from the landscape like living things, their walls curved and flowing as if they had grown rather than been built. Gardens flourished between the structures, filled with plants that seemed to be descendants of the same hardy vines that had carried him up the cliff. The entire city felt organic, as if the builders had worked with nature rather than against it. Alex activated his communication device, sending a signal down to the orbital station where his teammates waited. The message would take several minutes to reach them, traveling through the atmospheric interference that had made their transport shuttles unusable. This is Alex, I've reached the plateau. The ruins are intact and unlike anything in our databases. The energy signatures are stronger up here, and I'm beginning to understand why. While he waited for a response, Alex explored the nearest structure. The walls were smooth but not artificial, made from some kind of composite material that incorporated both stone and plant matter. The builders had discovered a way to merge organic and inorganic materials, creating structures that had endured for millennia while conventional buildings crumbled. The response from the orbital station crackled through the interference. Impossible. How did you reach the plateau? Our calculations showed that the cliff could not be climbed with available resources. Alex looked back at his vine rope still hanging over the cliff's edge. I used resources that were actually available. The vines growing on the cliff face are stronger than any synthetic rope. I wove them together and climbed up. The silence that followed told him everything he needed to know about his teammates' reaction. They were trying to process how their sophisticated analysis had missed such a simple solution. Alex continued exploring, documenting everything with his portable scanner. The ruins revealed a civilization that had achieved remarkable advances through principles completely different from those used by the current galactic powers. Where the Korathi built with rigid planning and the Threxians relied on mechanical precision, these ancient builders had embraced flexibility and adaptation. In the center of the ruins, Alex found what the expedition had truly been seeking. A chamber carved from living rock contained crystalline formations that pulsed with the mysterious energy signatures detected from space. But the crystals were not technological devices in any conventional sense. They were natural formations that had been carefully cultivated and shaped. Like gardens of living light, the chamber walls were covered with carved reliefs that told the story of the builders. Alex studied the images with growing amazement, recognizing patterns that his alien teammates would never have understood. The carvings showed a species that looked remarkably similar to humans. Working with their hands to shape both stone and living matter, these ancient people had possessed technology, but they had used it differently. Instead of building machines to dominate their environment, they had learned to work with natural forces. Their cities grew like forests, their energy systems flowed like rivers, their transportation methods moved like wind. Alex discovered that the energy signatures came from the interaction between the crystalline formations and the planet's natural magnetic field. The builders had not created an artificial power source, but had learned to channel and focus the energy that already existed. The entire plateau was actually a vast organic machine, using living systems to generate and distribute power. The carved reliefs showed how the builders had cultivated specific plants, including the vines that still grew on the cliff face. These were not random vegetation but carefully bred tools, each variety designed for specific purposes. The climbing vines were just one example of their biotechnology. Plants engineered to provide exactly the properties needed for vertical ascent. Alex's communication device crackled again. We are preparing emergency transport to extract you from the plateau. The energy expenditure will be significant, but Command has authorized the mission. That won't be necessary, Alex replied. I can climb back down the same way I came up, but you need to see what I found here. This changes everything we thought we knew about technological development. As Alex continued exploring, he realized that the ancient builders had faced the same challenges that confronted modern civilizations. They had needed energy, transportation, construction materials, and communication systems. But they had solved these problems through biological engineering rather than mechanical manufacturing. The ruins contained workshops where the builders had bred specialized plants and animals. They had developed living materials that could repair themselves, structures that could adapt to changing conditions, and energy systems that grew stronger over time. Their technology was not separate from nature, but was nature, carefully guided and enhanced. Alex found evidence that the builders had known about the galactic community. Star charts carved in stone showed the positions of worlds that would later be colonized by the Korathi, Threxians, and Vithari. But the builders had chosen a different path, developing inward rather than outward, creating harmony rather than conquest. The mystery of their disappearance became clear as Alex studied the final series of carvings. The builders had not died out or been destroyed. They had evolved beyond the need for physical civilization, learning to exist in harmony with their environment to such a degree that they had become part of it. The living technology they had created continued to function, tended by their descendants who had become one with the ecosystem itself. The energy signatures that had drawn the expedition to this world were not the products of abandoned technology, but of a living system still being maintained by beings who had transcended the need for cities and machines. The plateau was not a ruin but a garden, still growing and changing after millions of years. Alex realized that his vine rope climb had been more than just a solution to a physical problem. It had been a demonstration of the same principles that had guided the ancient builders. Instead of trying to dominate the cliff with technology, he had worked with the natural systems already in place. The message he would carry back to the galactic community would challenge everything they believed about progress and civilization. The most advanced species in the galaxy had been outdone by a human using twisted plant fibers, but more importantly, they had been shown a completely different way of thinking about technology and nature. The plateau held secrets that could revolutionize galactic civilization, but only if other species could learn to see past their addiction to mechanical solutions. The builders had achieved true sustainability by making their technology alive, and their legacy waited for those wise enough to understand it. The transport shuttle burned through the atmosphere like a falling star, its engines straining against the electromagnetic interference that had made this approach impossible just days before. Alex watched from the plateau as his teammates finally arrived, their advanced technology barely managing to overcome the obstacles that had defeated them earlier. Commander Vorth was the first to emerge from the shuttle, his blue-scaled features showing the confusion that Alex had expected. The Korathi leader approached the edge of the plateau and stared down at the vine rope that still hung over the cliff face. "This is how you climbed 300 meters of vertical rock?" Vorth asked, his voice carrying the disbelief of someone whose entire worldview had been challenged. "The vines were already here," Alex replied simply. "I just had to recognize that they were tools, not obstacles." Kess, the Threxian engineer, ran her scanners over the vine rope, while the other team members spread out to examine the ruins. "The tensile strength is remarkable," she admitted. "Our synthetic materials could not match this performance without significant power requirements." Alex led the team through the ruins, showing them the living architecture and the energy chambers that pulsed with natural power. The alien scientists took readings and recordings, but Alex could see that they were struggling to understand what they were seeing. "This appears to be some form of biological engineering," reported Nira, the Vithari scientist. "But our databases contain no record of such techniques." "That's because you've been thinking about technology wrong," Alex said, stopping before the chamber of carved reliefs. "These builders didn't separate technology from nature. They made technology that was alive?" The carvings told their story in images that Alex had spent hours deciphering. The ancient builders had started with the same technological path as the current galactic powers, but had chosen a different direction. Instead of building machines to control their environment, they had learned to work with living systems. They bred plants that could serve as tools, Alex explained, pointing to images of the builders cultivating various species. The vines on the cliff face aren't random vegetation. They're engineered climbing aids designed to provide exactly the properties needed for vertical ascent. Commander Vorth studied the carvings with growing understanding. They created a civilization based on biological systems rather than mechanical ones. And it worked, Alex continued. Their cities grew like forests, their energy systems flowed like rivers, their transportation moved like wind. They achieved everything that our civilizations have, but in a way that became stronger over time instead of wearing out. The team spent hours documenting the plateau's secrets, but Alex could see that they were only scratching the surface. The builders had left behind a complete alternative to mechanical civilization, a way of life that treated technology as a living partnership rather than a tool for domination. The energy signatures that brought us here, Cass said, studying her readings from the crystal chambers. They're not from abandoned technology, but from systems that are still active. Alex nodded. The builders didn't disappear. They evolved beyond the need for cities and machines. They became part of the ecosystem itself, but their living technology continues to function. The implications were staggering. Every species in the galaxy had followed the same technological path, building more complex machines to solve increasingly difficult problems. But the builders had found a different answer, one that created harmony instead of consumption. Your species continues to amaze us, Vorth said, looking back at the vine rope. We brought the most advanced technology available, but you succeeded with twisted plant fibers. I succeeded because I didn't see the cliff as a technological problem, Alex replied. I saw it as a physical challenge that required physical solutions. The builders understood the same thing. They didn't try to dominate nature with machines. They learned to work with nature as partners. The team prepared to return to the orbital station, their shuttles loaded with data and samples that would revolutionize galactic understanding. But Alex knew that the real discovery was not in the ruins or the living technology. It was in the lesson about different ways of thinking. The galactic community has always assumed that progress means building more complex machines, Alex said, as they prepared to depart. But what if progress means learning to work with the systems that already exist? The alien scientists exchanged glances that Alex had learned to recognize. They were beginning to understand that their technological superiority might actually be a limitation, that their sophisticated solutions might be missing simpler and more effective approaches. As the shuttles lifted off from the plateau, Alex took one last look at the ruins that had changed everything. The builders had achieved immortality not through technology but through harmony, creating a civilization that had evolved beyond the need for cities and machines. The vine rope still hung over the cliff edge, a simple tool that had accomplished what the galaxy's most advanced technology could not. It would remain there as a symbol of human ingenuity, a reminder that sometimes the greatest obstacles yield to the simplest solutions. The expedition's final reports would document more than just archaeological discoveries. They would describe a fundamental shift in thinking that could transform galactic civilization. The builders had shown that there was another way, a path that led not to greater complexity, but to greater wisdom. Alex had climbed the cliff because he refused to accept that something was impossible. But more importantly, he had shown his alien teammates that their sophistication could become a weakness, that their reliance on technology could blind them to simpler solutions. The galaxy's most advanced species had learned something invaluable from their most primitive partner. Being human meant more than just refusing to give up. It meant remembering that every problem had multiple solutions, and that the best answer was often the one that worked with existing systems rather than against them. The cliff that had stopped. An expedition of the galaxy's finest minds had been conquered by a human using nothing but plant fibers and determination. The lesson would echo through the stars for generations to come. A reminder that sometimes the most advanced technology is knowing when not to use technology at all. In the end, the aliens had abandoned the cliff because their sophistication had made them forget the value of simple solutions. The human had climbed it because he remembered that progress was not about building more complex machines but about finding better ways to work with the world as it already existed.